Hello and welcome to episode 60 of The Thing About Golf, Golf Australia magazine's ongoing quest to figure out what it is that hooks people on this wonderfully infuriating game. Rod Murray's my name, and alongside my colleague John Huggan, we get to talk to golfers from every imaginable corner of the game. Writers, administrators, caddies, entrepreneurs, and sometimes when we're really lucky, as we are on this episode, those who've played and won at the very highest levels of the game. Catriona Matthew is one of Scotland's most decorated players, winning the Women's British Open in 2009 and twice leading Europe to Solheim Cup victory. And yet, in her hometown of North Berwick, she walks the streets with barely an acknowledgement of who she is or what she's achieved. And funnily enough, that is just how she likes it. John Huggan sat down with Matthew recently to reflect on her life and career in golf and joins me now. Huggy, I know you chatted about this with Catriona in the interview. Is it a bit of a double-edged sword? Is that just a Scottish thing, or is what's going on there? Two-time Solheim Cup winner, British Open winner, and yet wanders around the town. So, is that just Scotland, or is there an underappreciation, perhaps, of what Matthew has done in the game?
There's the old saying, "You're never a hero in your hometown." But part of it is that she's never lived anywhere else. They're used to seeing her. She's there every day, pretty much, and she goes to Tesco's and does the shopping, and picks up the kids off the train when they come back from school and all that stuff, and
We assume about sort of big-time golfers and stars that they don't do the normal things that we do, but of course they do, don't they? They have kids and they've got to eat, so they have to cook. Not everybody has people to do all of those things. I'm sure some do. They're making those, but we forget they are just people, aren't they? At the end of the day.
Yeah, I mean, and she doesn't have very far to walk to the golf course. I'm not going to reveal exactly where her home is for obvious reasons, but it's not very far. Put it that way. You've
known her a long time, Huggy, Catriona. I imagine you've been writing about her for a very long time.
I have. I mean, she's a pal of mine, a long-time pal. So I've not got much credibility when it comes to writing about her because I'm conflicted by my relationship with her. But yeah, she's. I've always thought she's got the perfect temperament for golf. I mean, she's neither up nor down. I mean, she's just, at least outwardly, she doesn't show much emotion either side of the ledger, and perfect for golf, really. The only criticism I've ever had of her, and I mentioned it to her, I've mentioned it to her before, but she's not won as often.
I'm sure she's heard it before, yes.
Yeah, and it basically comes down to her putting. She hasn't been, that's never been the strength of her game. It's not a great weakness, but it's never been a strength. And if she'd putted better, I think she would have won a lot more tournaments.
You say that she's got this perfect personality for golf. Is she like that off the course, Bill, having known her for a long time? Is that just her personality, or is she doing something on the course to maintain that?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, it's not quite the same. I can reveal exclusively that she's very possibly the world's worst singer.
That's a competitive
If you've
category.
ever heard somebody sing off key, I mean, she brings it to a whole new level. And I've seen her with a couple of drinks in her now and again, but not for a while. But she's on the course. I couldn't fault her for how you should be in a competitive environment. She's just she's the model for that.
Easier or harder to do an interview with somebody you know so well, Huggy? Particularly an interview like this, a long form interview, not just talking about the day's play and how was your putting and you hit that bad iron on the 7th, a real sit-down sort of exploration of a life and career in the game. Easier or harder when you know them well?
Well, it's a bit of both, I think. The upside is, I mean, I've interviewed her a few times, obviously, and we've stopped and started again a few times because she plays a straight bat to too many questions, and I've just said, look, no, this is rubbish. We're not going any further with this. Start again, and she just laughs. So in that respect, it's easier, but yeah, I mean, you're compromised a little bit, aren't you? Inevitably. The friendship comes first rather than the journalist part of it, and hopefully I've managed to bridge that gap.
Well, it was my last question. How did you feel about having done more than one of these sort of in-depth interviews with her? How did you feel this one went? How do you feel about this one?
Yeah, it's good. I think she's cutting back on her playing now, and I think she's happier saying a few things. I mean, if you follow her on Twitter, she's actually speaking out a little bit more than she used to, and I think that came across, certainly when I talked to her. I noticed there was a bit of a difference there. Not that she's ranting and raving from the rooftops, but yeah, she's got things to say. She's very bright, so she's got plenty to say, which has always been a pity that she hasn't spoken out more, given her position. I mean, as you pointed out, she was the best. She's been the best Scottish woman golfer for about a quarter of a century, maybe more, which reflects well on her, but not well on the rest of them. But yeah, she's. I think it was in the sort of realm of Catriona Matthew interviews. This one was pretty good, I think.
I'm glad to hear you say I love when players like Matthew reach a stage in their career where they're no longer shackled by various business and commercial commitments and whatnot. And we do get to hear, because I think you're right, she strikes me as a thinker, and it's going to be wonderful to watch this part of her career unfold. I think we're seeing that a bit with Kari Webb, and I think we're going to see it with Catriona Matthew. It'll be fantastic. Let's plug in and have a listen. Huggy, thanks for joining us. Looking forward to the chat.
My pleasure.
Okay, Catriona Matthew, welcome to the Thing About Golf podcast. As ever, I always ask, the first question is always, what was the thing about golf for you?
Well, thanks, John. Very nice to be here today. The thing about golf for me, I think, obviously I still live here in North Berwick, grew up here in North Berwick. Golf to me was just a game I started playing, as a young kid, probably 6 or 7, with my family. It was a great family game, something I really enjoyed. I think golf now since then, really has been a huge part of my life. It's probably shaped me a little bit, just golf. And I think once it's got in my blood, it just stayed there, really. I loved it as a kid. I played a lot of different sports growing up, but I think golf was just one of those ones I think I played obviously a lot of badminton, a lot of tennis, a lot of hockey, and you had to play with people of the same kind of standard as you. And I think being so competitive, it just infuriated me if I felt someone wasn't trying their best. Because I always tried my hardest at everything I did. So
you're better to play somebody that's a wee bit better than you are at those other sports, aren't you? Yeah.
Absolutely. That's where golf, the beauty of golf, I think you can go out, and I loved, just going out and challenging myself and practicing. And, I could go out, I remember going out and playing kind of round the loop at North Berwick as a kid, just taking our dog out with us and just always challenging yourself to see if you could get better. So it was more a personal challenge. It was only me who could kind of decide whether I got better or not.
And did you like it because for the game itself, or did you like it because you were good at it?
Probably because I was good at it to start with, to be honest. Well, I think obviously you've got to love it to get good at it. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I mean, I think obviously I stuck in at golf rather than a different sport because it was the one I was the best at. I think when you're a kid, you always like doing things you're good at. So that was probably why I stuck at golf rather than another sport.
And when did it occur to you that, I'm actually quite good at that?
I think probably I played in the Scottish girls, because sadly when I was growing up there weren't that many girls who played golf in this area, so you had to go further afield. And I played in a Scottish girls, which I won I think at maybe 16 or 17. And then I kind of realised I was quite good at that. Badminton, my other sport, I was kind of always last in the team. And golf, I was getting first in the team and winning things. And as a kid, that's what you enjoy, and it kind of spurs you on to get better.
How was your, if I can put it this way, your level of encouragement? I mean, we're getting a lot better, I think, in terms of being a welcoming environment at golf clubs and things. But back in the day, it wasn't great for juniors, and particularly, I would imagine, for female juniors. I mean, what was your experience of that?
For me personally, my first club I joined was North Berwick, and to be fair, the ladies there were very welcoming. I mean, at the time, it was kind of two separate clubs. They're now integrated, but it was North Berwick ladies I joined. They were very happy for me to come and play in the Meadows. And I mean, as a kind of 15, 16-year-old, it was a bit odd playing with probably 40, 50-year-olds. Yeah. But they were all very welcoming and encouraging of me. And then kind of as I got better, I moved along to Gulland, where at the time there was a lot of other kind of good amateurs playing there, which really helped my golf, actually. They were all just that little bit older than me and kind of took me under their wing and showed me the ropes. Yeah.
What about the other sports? I mean, badminton, you were a decent badminton player. I mean, what sort of level would you, if you could equate that to golf, did you reach in these other things?
Badminton, I managed to squeak into the Scottish junior team. I remember going to Sweden. That was my first trip away on my own. So I went with the Scottish team there to Sweden to play in, I think, a quadrangular thing, probably Sweden, Denmark, Scotland, maybe England. So, But as I say, I was always last in the team in that.
Yeah, you didn't like the idea of getting beat?
No one does, do they?
Yeah.
You picked up the wrong sport for that because you don't win much.
Well, exactly. True enough. We'll get into that later, actually. That's one of the questions I've got for you later on. You went to Stirling to find educational establishment, as we all know. You've got to be very clever to get a degree from Stirling. Why do that rather than go to America? Because that must have been an option for you.
Yeah, I mean, America was certainly an option. I think obviously Stirling had just started up. I think yourself and a few others were kind of some of the first sports scholars there. And I think at the time it was Stirling and Loughborough that were doing sports scholarships over here. I think I went to Stirling, I think probably slightly influenced by my mum and dad. I think they wanted to make sure, I got a good degree. I suppose at the time you didn't know as much about the States and you wanted to have a degree that was recognised over here. So, I think they probably encouraged me to go there more than anything. And to be honest, looking back, probably for my golf game, it was the best because I still got coaching at the time.
Yeah.
Because I think...
You don't always get that in America.
No, I don't think you do. I mean, the golf coach is primarily more probably a manager rather than a coach. But and at the time back then, there was no video. There was really nothing like that. So I don't think you perhaps knew your golf swing as well as some of the younger players do now.
Was there a hint of caution in all of this? I mean, I look at your career and there's 3 Curtis Cups. I mean, there's not many people playing 3 Curtis Cups and then turn pro. Usually if you've played that many, you're a career amateur sort of thing. I mean, the degree thing would be part of that as well. It took you a while to make up your mind that golf was going to be the thing, or is that a wrong assumption?
No, it did take me a while. Probably halfway through university, that was when I decided I was going to turn pro. I think 93, I won the Scottish and the British. The same year I'd won, the Doherty out in Florida. I'd won a college event out in Japan. So it was probably then I decided I was going to turn pro. But I think back then people tended to turn pro a little bit later. That most people who went to college or university tended to finish their degrees. So, I mean, even then I was probably still slightly on the later kind of stage. But
Colin Montgomery was the same. He was 24 when he turned pro.
Yeah, but I think back then, 30 years ago now, it was more common for people to be early 20s before they turn pro.
All those things that you won there in that year, was that the kind of confirmation that I'm actually good enough to do this? Was there any doubt before that?
I don't know if there was any doubt, but I think that really, I suppose in my mind, I felt I had done everything. What else was I going to do in the amateur game? And I just felt it was time to give it a go. I think in a way it was easier for me going to Q school because in a way I was probably pretty naive because you didn't get much coverage of the LPGA. In fact, you got zero coverage. Yeah. Maybe you saw Laura or Lisa Lott winning a US Open. But so I didn't know what I'd be missing out on if I didn't get my card, which in a way probably made it a little bit easier than it is now.
And were you surprised once you got there how good you were relative to the competition?
I don't think so because I had played a lot of amateur golf worldwide. I think I had finished runner-up in the World Amateur where Annika won that year. Myself and Pat Hurst were the runners-up. So, it wasn't as if I'd just played in Scotland and Britain. I'd been all over the world playing amateur golf. So, I knew a lot of the players and, felt I was just ready to go.
Yeah. Take a step back for a minute. What was the strength of your game back then and has it changed as you've gotten older?
I think the strength of my game, I would always say playing-wise, was probably my ball striking. I felt as though I was always a good ball striker, always hit my irons well, and then progressed into really driving the ball pretty well. But looking back now, I'd probably say as well, the mental aspect, I think I was quite very strong in the mind, shall I say.
Yeah, I've always thought you've got the perfect temperament for golf. I've never really seen you get particularly angry. Even when I was caddying for you and I let the bag drop and nearly killed you, but
that was only 1 week. If you carried on for a few, you might have seen a difference.
Well, that's true. There's a bit of temperament coming out. Yeah, exactly. There's a few putts.
I think
you've
always got to have a bit of a temper, but people show it in different ways. I might look very calm, but don't get me wrong, I was fizzing inside.
Oh yeah, I can believe it. Yeah. Before we leave the amateur game completely, I just want to touch on where you grew up. We can almost see the golf course from where we're sitting right now. How much of an asset was that, or is it just because living in North Berwick there's not much else to do?
I think probably because living in North Berwick, and basically I got into the game because my dad played and my 2 brothers played, and then my mum took the game up when I went to school. So probably just circumstances of where I grew up that got me playing golf.
But I was meaning the golf course is really good. Even I have to admit that, coming from nearby. But how much of an asset was that when you think back on it now? You think you don't really appreciate it as you grow up, but you look back now, you probably think, oh, that was a big help.
Yeah, you're probably right. North Berwick and Gullen, probably where I played a lot of my golf as a junior. Two great golf courses, which at the time you just think, well, they're the local courses that you go and play on, so you don't think much of it.
Was the same.
It's like my kids; they think, oh, living in North Berwick's boring. I said, wait 20 years and you'll appreciate it more. But I think I was just lucky to grow up here, but it probably did help my development in, that's probably what made me a great ball striker, hitting off the links turf.
Yeah, I was going to say that. What part of your game was influenced the most, would you say? You've probably just already answered that. But.
Yeah, I think the ball striking. I mean, I think anyone who's played links golf, you have to strike it. I've never really taken much of a divot, which probably because of growing up here, I'd be injured and have a sore elbow if I was taking a divot out here in the summer.
Well, there's nothing like hitting irons off that turf, though, is there?
Yeah, you just get that lovely smack of the iron. I think when you really connect with one.
Exactly. Anyway, we're on the LPGA tour. You've arrived. You got your card right away, I'm assuming.
I did, yes.
Yeah.
Funny story there. I actually had Chuck Moore caddied for me in the final Q School, who caddied for Larry Mize, and that we got to know him because he just happened to knock on my mum and dad's door one day when the Open was at Muirfield, looking for somewhere to stay.
Right.
And we were friends ever since, and he actually caddied for me at Q School, and then when I won in Mexico, he was caddying.
He was the one that was on the back when Mize chipped in at the Masters, was he?
He wasn't that one, no.
That's a pity. That would have made the story even better. A great anecdote would have been, would have evolved, yes. So anyway, early on, what were your, how well were you doing right away? I mean,
I suppose right away, my first year was a very strange year. I remember playing in Florida, and of course, bizarre me being rather stupid, asked Deb Richardo, had she played on tour long? And then Graham, my husband, turned around and said, oh yeah, she's won 6 times. I said, oh my God. I probably didn't say another word for the rest of the round.
Yeah.
And then played in Hawaii. And then my third event in Tucson, I was actually heading to TMS Rustra Hospital and needed emergency surgery and was out for probably about 6 weeks. But I mean, as you are at that age, I probably came back too soon and kind of struggled that first year, and I think just managed to keep my card.
Was it your appendix?
An ovarian cyst that had twisted.
Yeah.
So yeah,
we'll get too deep into that. we'll move quickly on.
Swiftly on.
You mentioned your husband Graham. I mean, he's been on the bag for a good chunk of your career. That's not always the best policy, but you seem to make it work. I mean, talk a bit about that. I mean,
I think we decided kind of early on, we'd met at university and he went on and did his 3 years qualification and, became a qualified CA. And when I think the day he qualified, he quit and came out to caddy for me. I think we decided that if he didn't do that, we'd never see each other. Yeah. So, it was, he wanted to come out and caddy and we thought it was a good idea. And luckily for us, I think I played pretty well most of my career. I didn't really have ups and downs. I think it would have been difficult if you'd had ups and downs. Like anything, if you're playing well and doing well, it's all hunky-dory.
Yeah.
But like anything, some weeks were better than others.
Well, yeah, I'm getting to that. I want to know. There's got to be some moments that you would like to share with the.
I think he's probably threatened to drop the bag on me a few times.
Yeah. Tell me how that goes, though.
It's just, I think, obviously having Graham, I think it's probably more difficult in a way because he's wanting me to do so well, which makes it even harder, I think, to caddy when things aren't going quite so well. And you want someone there because, I mean, life on tour, at the end of the day, it's just you and your caddy and your kind of family that are wanting you to do well. It's pretty cutthroat. Yeah. So, to have him there caddying, I think for 99% of the time it was a great support, but obviously we did have the odd argument.
Well, yeah, I'm going to pin you down on this. I want an example. I mean, come on, there must be a moment.
Example. I'm sure he could reel off loads. I tended to just forget them.
Yeah.
What can I think of? I do remember at one US Open, I think we did have, I think it was Black Wolf Run, and I was missing the cut. It was really hot, and I remember a couple of the other caddies, we got to this par 3, and I think I'd messed up the hole before, and we weren't perhaps speaking too much to each other.
Communication
Communication had kind of fizzled out, shall we say.
Yeah.
And it was like the 35th hole, so it was kind of over.
Yeah.
So I think I said, what was the yardage? And I just got the yardage book thrown down. You find it. So then I kind of start pacing out my yardage.
Yeah.
And the other caddies are just laughing. But I mean, it was just kind of things like that.
All right, well, it's the usual, the wrong club, wrong yardage, that kind of thing. Yeah. But,
I think that it just probably escalated a little more sometimes because he was wanting me to do so well.
Aye. And did you take that back with you to the hotel afterwards? Did things linger? Did you
We had a few
golf
quiet
afterwards?
meals, shall we say.
Yeah.
Instead of not talk golf, we just didn't talk.
Very good. Now, you touched on this a little bit. The only real criticism I've ever had of you as a golfer is that you didn't win more often. You've heard me say this before. What were the reasons for that? Or is it true? Do you feel like you underachieved in terms of wins?
I think golf is very difficult to win, but I would agree with you. I would have liked to win more, and I had a ridiculous amount of top tens.
Yeah. Well, you 18 top tens in majors.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I wish I'd won more. If I could have pinpointed what was holding me back or why I couldn't just get it across the line, that would have been great. Looking back, it's always difficult to say, isn't it? Could it have been my putting? Perhaps could have been a little more aggressive at times. I mean, obviously, I would have wanted to win more than I did, and probably felt I should have won more than I did. I suppose you can always say it was at a time when Annika was winning 9 a year, Carrie Webb was winning 7 a year, and then you had Lorena and Sari. But every era can say that, so that's just a kind of an excuse, really.
Is there one that you look back on with a particular disappointment?
I think what is now the Chevron Championship, the Dinah Shore, when I was playing in it, I think it was the year Morgan Pressel won. I think Suzanne had she kind of had it won and then had a kind of mess up on the back nine. Yeah. And I just needed to par I think it was at the time, I didn't know at the time, but I knew obviously I was in contention. I was a few groups in front, but looking back, a par at the last would have got me in a playoff with Morgan. And, I'd duffed up, I'd kind of messed up my layup and then was kind of in between yardages and kind of the ball ran off to the right and then a terrible 3-putt. So that's probably one I really kind of regret.
Yeah, there's always one, isn't there?
Yeah. And that was actually just coming back after having Katie. That was about my third tournament back. Yeah. So it would have been quite a good story to have won 2 majors.
Well, I was going to say, we're getting to that. The flip side of that, of course, was the win at Lytham, which was remarkable in many ways. I mean, you played so well, but the fact that you played so well so soon after giving birth.
Yeah, I mean, obviously that was completely out of the blue and completely unexpected. I mean, I went into that week hoping to get my goal was probably a top 20. I'd kind of set myself a top 20 to, I think it was Alison Nicholas who was the Solheim captain that year, and it was just to try and get into the reckoning and, sure, I was kind of back playing and playing well, and, if there was a space available for me in the team, I was ready to take that pick.
Do you think that lowering of expectations was actually a good thing, in a way?
Oh, definitely. I think, especially the British, I think being British, you'd go in and you always put probably too much pressure on myself. And then on a links course, everyone thought, you've grown up playing links golf, you should be an expert at links golf. But, over the years, I actually hit the ball high, which coming from where I do is bizarre. But So, I mean, I definitely put too much pressure on myself. And that week, I went in and I remember saying to Graham, I said, I kind of amazingly laughed if I had the odd bad shot, because I kind of said, well, what do you expect? You're going to hit the odd bad shot. Mm-hmm. I wish I could have had that attitude the whole time. But if you're practicing, the whole time, you stupidly think you're never going to hit a bad shot, and then so you get mad. Yeah.
And what did you do particularly well that week apart from attitude?
I didn't go in a bunker. I remember, I think we had a really good game plan, laid up. I remember on 2 and 3, which anyone who's played Lytham, they're kind of bunkers, certainly from where we were teeing off, right in line.
Bunkers at Lytham.
And if you went, and at the time, they were quite long par 4s. So if you went in them, you were basically playing out and then you were struggling. It was going to be a good bogey. Yeah. So I would lay up with maybe a 5 wood, and then perhaps if a 3 wood in, I reckoned I was better. Even if I missed the green with a 3 wood, I was up there with a chance of a chip and putt. Yeah. Otherwise, I was looking at kind of a bogey or a double. So, I don't think I went in a bunker all week. Certainly not a fairway bunker. Yeah.
And what did that feel like? Is it a kind of vindication of your career? I mean, what was the sort of feeling afterwards? Probably not at the time, but 2 days later, you ever think about it?
Yeah, I mean, I suppose at the time I just couldn't quite believe it, to be honest.
Yeah.
It was only my second week back. I think I'd had Sophie probably 11 weeks before that, so it was all a bit of a whirlwind. I mean, it was over. I had one, we had driven back home, and you're back kind of up feeding Sophie at 3 a.m, and obviously Katie at the time was probably 2.5, so it was busy, and then it kind of whirlwind. I remember coming home, and the next day there was about 3 media trucks sitting outside our driveway. It was all those. Probably took a while to kind of sink in, and probably not till a few years later it really sunk in what an achievement it was, really.
Yeah. Were you driving back up the road and turned to Graham and said, "We really must have more children. This is working. We need to. This is the system from now on."
We should have started earlier.
Well, maybe so. Yeah, maybe so. You're touching on things that are on my list here. The media trucks outside the house. I mean, ladies golf in general doesn't get anything like the publicity it probably deserves. And I once wrote a column. It was the Open qualifying here at North Berwick, and I was there watching, and the scoreboard up just outside the clubhouse there. And I looked up, and you'd just been, I think it was the week before, you'd been something like 6th or something in the US Women's Open. And there you were walking past, you're pushing the, pushchair thing, and you had a Tesco, bag hanging from the back, and nobody even looked. And there,
That's the beauty of living here, isn't it?
Well, yeah, that's part of it. But yeah, I mean, it struck me that if it had been a man who'd been 6th in the US Open the week before, and he was walking past, there would have been people going up and...
Well, maybe the non-locals. I think the locals just, you're just... I'm just Catriona, I'm just a normal person in a way.
That, but my bigger point is that, you don't get the recognition.
I think in the last 10, 15 years, or certainly the last 10 years, it's improved a lot. Women's golf and women's sport in general is getting a lot more recognition. I think you can just see that in how the prize money's going up in all the events. I think back then, at the time it felt like a lot of recognition, but it's just, I think it's heading in the right direction, which is good.
Mm-hmm. How has that evolved on the tour? I mean, you talked about Annika and Carrie Webb. I mean, they won multiple times routinely. It's getting harder to win. Nobody's really doing it that often now, which speaks to a greater depth. I for one, I like watching the women now, the top women playing far more than the men, because I don't like the way the men play or play the courses. The women play the courses the way they were designed to be played far more than the men do. Yeah,
there's a much greater variety of shots, played, I think, probably in the women's tour. Par fours are par fours.
Yeah.
They're not a pitch and a putt. And par fives are... I still think they probably play a few of them too long. It would be nicer and more exciting to see some of them more reachable.
Yeah.
But I think the strength and depth in the women's game as well is increased. You can just see that. I think there's 27 different nationalities now on the LPGA and probably about 20 on the LET.
Yeah, winning 3 times now is pretty good.
Winning 3 times. Jin Young Ko last year and Jessica. Nelly were phenomenal seasons, really.
Yeah. Yeah, nobody's doing it 9 times anymore.
I really probably couldn't see that. You could never say never, because look at Tiger came along, but it's a bit less and less likely to happen, I think. Just with the strength and depth, you've got all the Asian players now. The Thailand's producing some great players. Obviously the Japanese, the Koreans.
Yeah, I think they're great fun to watch. I think more people should go and watch them, because it's just, as you say, far greater variety. And it's not just smashing away off the tee and wedging it onto the green from anywhere, basically.
No. And the women's game as well is going the same way as the men's game. The players are getting bigger, stronger, hitting it further.
Yeah, it's maybe we're making
but the courses are still long enough that we're still playing a proper par 4.
Mm-hmm. There was a kind of a stushy, or minor stushy last year, I think it was, when the women... I was reading about the women were getting upset about the setups. There was some complaints about the way the LPGA courses were set up. And I remember thinking, what this is... I don't get it, because they were complaining... Some of the women were complaining about the scores relative to the men's scores, and they wanted to be 20 under winning it. No.
I think, though, John, you're obviously know about golf, but if you're a general person who doesn't know perhaps a whole lot about golf, sees the men at 30 under and the women at 15 under, they'll think, well, they're not as good.
Yeah.
Whereas relatively speaking, we're playing the courses a lot longer, pound for pound, than the men are. Obviously the men are great, don't get me wrong, but I'm sure probably a lot of them would rather have more variety in the courses they play.
Yeah. So how did you feel about that at the time? I mean, what was your feeling? Is there a case to be made of the courses set up the way
I think probably, it is frustrating, because if we played a course where we were hitting the same clubs in as the men, it would be very short.
Yeah.
I think probably the way to go is to rein the men's game in, so that they're playing the courses how it should be played.
Well, that was my point. The men should be
a
copying the women, not the women copying the men.
Yeah. And then you get the people who argue it's meant to be entertainment, but it's. I think probably eventually they will rein in, because you can't keep making golf courses longer.
No.
And you can just you're just getting better and better athletes, whether it's the equipment, the ball. The players are bigger, they're stronger, they're working out more. They're far more into their health and nutrition and being in the best shape they can be. So something's got to change, or else you'll be having to have a 10,000-yard course.
Well, that's where we're headed if you don't do anything about it. Yeah. I mean, it was interesting, I think, when I caddied for you in the Vic Open, 2 or 3 years ago now, it's difficult to make the course fair, especially on the last day. I think we talked about that at the time, was the clubs that you were hitting to the pin positions that they had the course were in play on that day. It's incredibly difficult for you to hit a 6-iron closer than 20 feet, whereas the men were hitting wedges and had a chance to these tight pins. So it's not an easy thing to do.
Yeah, but I suppose you could see, for us to be hitting a wedge in, we'd be having to play the course at like 6,000, which people would then look at and think, they're playing a pitch and putt.
Yeah. But I think the comparison between the two is not a road that you should go down ever. So
it's very difficult, because I think even if we were hitting a 6-iron and the men were hitting a 6-iron, they're putting so much more spin on it. We probably need to hit.
Yeah,
and then I think in the bad weather as well, they've just got that. In windy weather,
what strength comes in.
They've got that strength just to keep the ball. They can hit a softer shot and still get the distance in the way.
Yeah. I mean, and how do you feel about what's the sort of level of rough on LPGA Tours events?
It can't be too tough, because we physically aren't strong enough.
That's
I never quite get that comparison. I'm never going to be able to compete off the same tees against a top guy.
No, of course not.
It's just not physically possible, and I don't know why anyone would really want to be honest.
Yeah, it makes no sense.
It makes no sense to me. We're never going to be, we're not built the same way, so we're never going to hit it the same distance, so you can't compete off the same tees. So that's why golf is so good, why I could go out and play with a 36 handicapper and give them 36 shots and have a good game.
Yeah. How do you feel about you look at it, from slightly from a distance, that the men's game and the distance argument? How do you feel about that? My views on this are well known. I think we should be bifurcating. I think
they've got to rein in the ball for the top pros, because it is. I love watching golf. I'm a bit of a golf nerd, and I love watching golf on TV. But at times the men's game, to me, just gets a little dull, because it just infuriates me that they hit wedge everywhere, and there's no real benefit in hitting the fairways. I'm
not offended by the low scores. I think
no, because they're. Obviously, I've seen them up close and playing, and they're. I think the better players would probably want that as well, because they would showcase them more.
Absolutely. Yeah, my problem is how they achieve those low scores. If there's. I always go back to US Open that Cabrera won. I think I've mentioned this before on here, but I remember watching Tiger. I think it was the third round. Tiger at the top of his game went out and shot 69. Now there's something wrong with the golf course. If Tiger at the top of his game shoots 69, they've tricked it up. If Tiger at the top of his game on a properly set up course should shoot 63, that was my point.
What always infuriates me is, and that's over the years. It's maybe improving, but. You get, say, a woman go out and shoot 63. Oh, of course, it's too easy. Aye. But you get a guy shoot 63. Oh, great golf.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's all perception, isn't it?
That's always infuriated me, actually.
Yeah.
But I think they will eventually change something in the men's game. Otherwise, too many of the great courses will be obsolete.
Well, they already are.
It'll be very interesting at St Andrews this year. But links course, everyone, if there is no wind, they will shoot a zillion under. But any links course, really, if you're a good player, if there's no wind, links courses are designed to be played in wind.
Yeah, well, this has been mentioned on this podcast before with other people, and they kind of agree with me. I think if it's a flat, calm week, we'll see
Someone will shoot probably 59.
will be multiple scores in the high 50s, I think.
But then
does
you
that
could
matter
go
to
to
you?
any. Does that really matter? I mean, but you could come in the next year and play it in 30 miles an hour and
Aye.
even par wins. I mean, you can't trick up a golf course too much. That's links golf. I think it's more weather dependent than anywhere else. I mean, in playing in the US, the weather doesn't come into it quite so much.
No, I mean, I'm more offended by the fact that they've grown all this long grass on the old course. I mean, I'm using the example again, the principal snows bunkers on the 16th. I mean, the rough is coming in there on the left. It's only a few yards from the bunkers. That's not what the old course is about. It's even more offensive on that course.
All right,
where there shouldn't be any long grass.
No.
But anyway, so the women are getting it right, are they? I mean, are they heading in the right direction, course setups and things, and not really caring about the men, or is there less?
Well, I
of
think
that?
they do care about the men. I think hopefully the men will do something. Otherwise, will the ladies, like I say, because if the men are shooting 30 under and we're shooting 15 under, the perception from a lot of the average fan is that we're not as good. So it'll be interesting. I think the one place I think they could get more creative is on the par fives and make a few more risk reward holes.
Yeah, I mean,
so many of our par fives are, they call it reachable if you can get there with like a 3-wood. But then we sometimes don't help ourselves.
Well, the last hole on the Dinah Shore one,
that should be played up the up tee every single time. It's far more exciting.
It becomes a 100-yard par 3.
Yeah.
Unless you put a board at the back of the green and let people. What was that all about, by the way?
Yeah. Was that in hindsight wasn't their finest move?
Oh my goodness, it's just horrific. But we need to get into the Solheim Cup. Obviously, that's been a huge part of your career. Got off to a wee bit of a shaky start, though. I want to take you back to 1998. It's not all been sweetness and light for Catriona Matthew in the Solheim Cup. What was that like at the time?
Yeah, 98, I played. That was my first one, Muirfield Village. Obviously delighted to get picked for the team. I think I'd won the Australian Open in 96 and obviously I'd been doing well in the LPGA. And, it was kind of scary, actually. I remember going in and I didn't know that many of our team even.
Right,
and suddenly you're there with kind of Laura and Alfie and Alison Nicholas and Trish and kind of all these people I've looked up to and watched. And was fortunate enough to go out and play with Annika. She was my partner quite a lot in the Solheim.
That helped.
Always helps.
Yeah.
So, had a great partner and, it was a great experience. I think that... we were beaten, I think, fairly easily. I had the great honour of losing the losing
that
point.
That was my point, yes.
Which wasn't wonderful. I think that probably spurred me on to want to not to be in that position again.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and was it the next one at Loch Lomond where you were out and you were in and then you were out again?
That was a bizarre kind of situation. I think one of the players, I think it was Helen, was injured, and would she play or wouldn't she play? And I suppose slightly controversially not been picked, and anyway, I didn't
slightly
play.
Controversially. I remember writing about that. It was more than slightly,
In the past, now.
Yes,
in the past.
Yeah, but did that kind of thing, were you getting put off a wee bit by the Solheim Cup, or did that just make you think, right, even more determined, we need to do something about
I think
this?
that made me even more determined.
Yeah. Well, it got better after that fairly quickly. Run me through the highs and lows of it. I mean, mostly highs, I think.
Obviously I played, I missed those, I played Muirfield Village and then missed the next 2 and then played in the next 8. So, obviously a highlight would be Barsabak, my first winning team. I think that was 2003. Yeah. Kind of all got messed up a little with 9/11. But, that was, I think that was the first. Went to that one and the crowds were just huge, I remember, or felt like it at the time. Yeah. It was quite a tight tree-lined course in places, and just the Swedes had come out in force and the fairways were lined, and we ended up winning that very comfortably. But the singles, I remember it came down. They all in fact, coming back, I played with Janice Moody, which was great fun. Yeah. I had 3 games with Janice, which I think we won all 3. And I'd played amateur golf with Janice. We played in the Scottish team together. So that was a great partnership. It was great
back
fun.
When she had a Scottish accent, was it?
So that was great fun playing with her. And then, obviously, the singles, you could just tell from the leaderboard, it was coming down to myself or Annika was playing behind me, I think. Right. So it was coming down to one of us as to who would get the winning point. And luckily for me, it came to me the 17th. I remember Barsabak, dead straight par 4 towards the water. And I remember putting 2 nice shots onto the green. I think driver ATAR, and I was playing Rosie Jones, and I suppose the one thing, if I'm being to make it even better, would have been she'd missed a green and then chipped up, missed a putt, so she ended up conceding. Right. It would have been nice to have a putt for
you
it.
didn't actually hold anything to do it. Yeah.
But I do remember Sophie Gustafsson just about knocking me over as she raced onto the green.
Right.
But that was great fun, that one, I must say. That, and then probably Colorado. I think one of the best moments, which bizarrely I wasn't even playing, it was the Saturday afternoon, and I think Lisa Lott had put out, I think we had a lot of rookies that year, and she'd put out all the rookies in the afternoon. And I remember sitting with Suzanne and Anna and Graham behind the 18th green, and I think one game won maybe on 17, and then the other 3 games all came up 18, and we happened to win them all, and that was great fun, just sitting there cheering them on. And I remember Karine Ishe hitting a great putt down. I think she maybe holed it, and that was one of the best moments. Actually, was sitting watching that.
Yeah, there's nothing like winning as a team, is there?
There isn't. Yeah, no. I mean, I think golf's so individual that. To have that opportunity. I always loved team golf as an amateur. They were the best memories. You make great friendships, and I think that's probably why I loved the Solheim Cup so much, because it was that team element. You had your whole team there, and the captains and the caddies, and everyone was together, rather than normally on tour it's really just you and your caddy. Who luckily for me was
no
great.
one else cares.
No one else really cares. No.
If people even say, "Well, I shot 78," most people are thinking, "Well, I wish it was 79."
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, and there's nothing like stuffing the Americans. Let's face it.
No. I mean, it's a great feeling.
Is there much banter on the tour? Solheim banter?
I think there is. Yeah, because I mean, at the end of the day, we all play against each other week in, week out. So you kind of all know each other. But they're as desperate to beat us as we are to beat them, I think.
Absolutely, as they should be.
Yeah, we're all competitive. We wouldn't be out there if we weren't competitive. So,
have you got any pals on the other side?
I was Wendy Ward. I always seemed to play her. Laura Diaz. Played them a lot in Solheim's.
But you've answered another question. You're a politician. That wasn't the question I asked. I was asking you if you've got any pals on the other side.
I do Peloton rides with Laura still.
All right.
She's got a Peloton now. So, I mean, it's things like that. Wendy, I played Curtis Cups with, so I'd known her since then. So she ended up being vice captain, I think, for Julie's. So it's always great to catch up. I think it's in kind of things like that. You can not see someone for 5 years and suddenly you see them and you just kind of take off from where you were.
Mm-hmm. And, I don't want to skip over your playing career in the Solheim too much, but there was, you got hauled in at the last minute in your last one as a player.
Yeah, in Des Moines, that's right. That was kind of
strange. What was that like? That must have been difficult.
It was quite tricky. Yeah. It was difficult. I hadn't been playing great, if I'm being brutally honest. And
you weren't feeling bad about not being in the team.
Wasn't feeling bad about not being in the team. And then Suzanne got injured. Annika obviously had told me at Kingsbarns that she was going to you put one name in an envelope.
Right.
She told me that you'd never expect to get pulled out of it. And then obviously got pulled in, I think, on the Wednesday. Suzanne, couldn't play with her back injury. So, and then bizarrely then suddenly get put out in the foursomes, which I must say was a little odd.
Aye, yeah, well, that's true, yeah.
And then obviously loved playing with Karine, actually. I thought we were quite similar personalities in a way and just kind of got on with it. And I ended up playing actually really well. I remember playing Stacey in the singles, and I think she was she maybe 2 up or 3 up with maybe 8 to go, and I had Mikey caddying for me, who was meant to have been caddying for Suzanne, and I remember saying to him, well, this is going to be my last singles, so I don't want to lose it, and somehow I managed to pull it out to a win on the last green.
Yeah. What was your match play philosophy, if you like? Everybody's different, and did you pay attention to the other player? Did you play the course? I
think definitely that was why I think I love match play so much. Definitely, pay attention to the other player.
Yeah.
I actually bizarrely, I know everyone always says foursomes is so difficult, but bizarrely I actually found foursomes easier than 4-ball. Whether my record shows that, I don't know. But
to be fair, I didn't look up your foursome, but you're 6.5 out of 9 singles in the Solheim, which is pretty chunky.
Yeah. But foursomes, I just loved. I think always in 4-ball, I think I tried too hard. I tried to probably change my game too much.
Well, you were never one for making lots of birdies, right? Yeah.
No. So I think that's where probably foursomes really suited me. And singles, loved it. It was just you against the other person, wasn't it? I mean, I was always went out with the attitude it didn't really matter what I scored. as long as I beat the other person.
Yeah.
If you had to shoot 2 over to beat them, fair enough. If you had to shoot 5 under, well, shoot 5 under.
Yeah, well, my experience of team golf is there was always a couple of people on the other team that you thought, I'd rather not. And I would imagine that you would have been one of those people for the Americans. I mean, they'd all be thinking, quite happy to, obviously you play, but I'd rather not play Beanie. I'd rather play somebody else, which is a nice compliment.
Yeah, which is a great compliment to have, actually. Yeah.
And when was the best golf that you played in the Solheim?
I would probably say, obviously, Barsabac, probably those middle ones I played in. I think the first probably one, I was pretty nervous. It was all new. You're just kind of getting used to it. I wasn't certainly the standout rookie, like I say, Leona or Charlie were in their ones.
Yeah.
So I think those ones I played in the middle were probably where I played my best golf. Towards the end, I think the nerves start jangling a bit too much. Because I think when you're at your best, that's what you love as a professional golfer, is being under the gun and having that pressure. But I think at the start of your career and the end of the career, that's probably, where the pressure probably gets to you the most.
When you're peaked in the middle.
Yeah,
exactly. And inevitably, we have to talk about the captaincy. You remarkably, I must admit,
quite remarkable.
Well, no, I mean, the fact it had never been done before, that's remarkable. But I did have misgivings, I must admit, when you took it on the second time, because I thought, can it really get any better than the way it finished at Gleneagles? Suzanne Pettersson holding the putt, retiring. I mean, it doesn't get any better.
No, it doesn't get any better than that. And I absolutely loved being captain.
Yeah.
People would always ask me, "Oh, are you nervous? Are you nervous?" And I'm going, "No." I said, as a captain, you could actually enjoy your Solheim Cup more, because you could wander onto the tee, not having to hit a shot, not having to play, not having to worry about winning. So you could really enjoy it and kind of savour the atmosphere. Once you had put your team out, what could you do? Yeah. I mean, I remember when I took it on the first time, I remember saying to Graham, I said, well, if I win, everything I've done's been great, and if I get beaten, everyone will be second guessing.
Exactly.
So I think as long as you go in with that attitude, that you're going to I was going to do my best and try and prepare and put out what I thought was going to be the best team, and if they won, they won, and if they didn't, it was all my fault.
Yeah.
So
what was your philosophy on pairings and things? I mean, everybody's got a way of doing it. Was it personality driven, game driven?
A little bit of everything, actually, to be honest. A little bit of personality, a little bit of game. I think Gleneagles was certainly, for foursomes, was a strange type of course where I think one player, if everything was played, in regulation, one player in the foursomes was going to get all the iron shots and the other player was going to get all the putts. I remember Paul McGinley telling me that. So that obviously influenced a lot of the pairings at Gleneagles. And then obviously just putting someone like a Suzanne with an Anne Van Dam. I mean, I remember speaking to Suzanne and saying she was moving from being that kind of player who was going to go out and make all the birdies. And I said, look, you just go out and play your game, throw in a few birdies and let Anne do all the fireworks. Yeah. So I think in that respect, it's pairing people, because I think like even an Anna and a Georgia partnership, which worked so well in Des Moines, perhaps wasn't going to work quite so well in Gleneagles, because Georgia had progressed from the kind of rookie to she had won the major. Anna probably, if you asked her herself, wasn't playing her best at Gleneagles. So I just felt that partnership wasn't probably going to, the dynamics weren't the same. Yeah,
Paul McGinley made that point to me somewhere when he and Padraig Harrington were great friends and partners, and they won the World Cup for Ireland back in the day when, long before Harrington won his majors, and McGinley was the kind of senior member of that. But it changed and evolved, and when Harrington became a better player and won what he did, and McGinley was a good player but not a great player, it didn't work as well. Yeah. So
I think the dynamic kind of changes, doesn't it?
There's a time limit on most things, and I think there is on most partnerships. Not all, but most.
I mean, obviously, Celine and Georgia worked well at Gleneagles and at Inverness, but I think every partnership has its. I mean, Anna, I think is. And every player evolves as well. I mean, as you play,
that's what I mean. It changes.
Anna's taken on that real leadership role. Obviously had Georgia, and then obviously played with Matilda at Inverness.
Mm-hmm. How much advice did you take on pairings and things, and not just during the matches or just before them, but well before? Who did you talk to, and what was the best advice?
Really, just the other vice captains. I mean, obviously for Gleneagles, I spoke to Paul because he had captained, at Gleneagles and won, and that was where he came up with the stats about the foursomes, which was really probably influenced a few of my pairings.
Yeah. And what was the?
And
best
I think otherwise, I think it was more just. What I had learned over playing in 9.
Aye.
The things I liked, the things I looked for in a partner. And I think just knowing your players, I think you've got to know your players. And, you'd obviously ask probably a few of the senior ones, who they perhaps might like to play with. And I remember Paul telling me, you can always persuade them to think it's their idea to play with someone.
Oh, that's true. That's a good idea. Was there ever any somebody saying, I didn't want to play with somebody? Did you ever get that? Without naming names?
Yeah, had that actually in Inverness. Mel and I think it's well known, Mel and Leona weren't particularly keen to play with each other to start with, but managed to persuade them to give it a go, and it worked out well. I think really just because they didn't know each other, and they both had a perception of each other which turned out not to be quite what they thought.
And what was your reasoning for putting them together? Were they the two left over? Were they?
No, I don't think there were two left over. No. I mean, obviously, you were always going to play. I think Anna and Matilda was a great pairing. And then trying to think who else I had. Charlie and Emily. They were good friends.
There's
and
always a couple of obvious.
It's always getting a good partner for Charlie. I think is important. And then the other pairing was Georgia and Celine, which obviously you were going to try because they'd played so well. At Gleneagles, and then obviously Leona was obviously one I was going to play in the foursome. She'd been playing really well, and for me, just felt like she was going to be a natural foursomes player.
She's a kind of younger version of you, I think, in a lot of ways.
Right.
Temperament-wise, I mean, she's very, focused and.
Yeah, I mean, she's not the flashiest of players, but just is a really solid player who gets it done. So I was always going to play her, and then Mel had been playing well, just felt she would be a good, had that experience to play. So just felt I kind of felt. I don't know what made me think that might be a good pairing, but I just thought it would be, and luckily persuaded them to give it a go.
Take me inside the team room as much as you want. There's always a bit of mystique about team rooms at these things.
Not probably as exciting as people think.
No, I'm sure it isn't. But that's one thing. Well, you've already told us one thing. Wait, what else goes on, and what is it like in there?
It's just really quite relaxed. I think Inverness actually this year, because of COVID, was actually probably really good, because it was just sometimes you can get a lot of other people who kind of trying to get in.
Yeah.
But we had such a small, I suppose, team, as you would say now, with the staff, and we all kind of just muck in together. I mean, I think there was probably only about 4 LET staff running the whole thing for us.
Yeah.
So we just kind of all muck in together. You've got the physios, the caddies, obviously the LET staff, the players. So you just all come in, and it's just very relaxed, to be honest. Some people like playing pool, table tennis. I mean, we usually always have a quiz night one night. Right. So there's always kind of little things we do. A couple of motivational videos, or not necessarily motivational, because no one needs to be motivated, but just
funny,
just something fun, just something to keep you relaxed.
Yeah.
And then it's just very relaxed. If people want to go to bed, then go to bed. If others want to stay up later,
You should always let them do whatever they normally do.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, Ian Woosnam was always the classic example. Telling Ian Woosnam not to have a couple of pints or whatever. He always has a couple of pints, so let him do that. Yeah. There's no point in changing the rhythm of it.
No. I mean, it's such a strange week and so different from any other week. The closest you can keep it to being similar is best. I mean, some of them want to go to the gym, absolutely fine, go and get physio. And that's a great thing. It's all right there. So, I mean, you can come in and out as you please.
And who won the quiz night?
Not my team.
Oh, it was teams.
It was teams. Right. Table. Whoever's at your team.
All right. Yeah, I would have thought with your degree in accountancy, you've been right up there. It's I
can't remember the questions, but they're pretty random. I think there was a music round, so that was a real dead loss for me.
Yeah. Inevitably, again, there's yet another inevitable. We need to talk about the Saudi stuff that's been going on. It's pretty more obviously to do with the men's game. They've had some pretty high-profile stuff happening with Mickelson and the rest of it. How have you viewed that from the side, if you like.
Yeah, I've obviously just been watching from the sidelines. I mean, obviously the LET, I think it's a different Saudi group. They're with Gulf Saudi and Aramco, which is different. And I've played in those events, and I've played in Saudi. I think for the Saudi Golf League, just from what I've read from the outside, I don't know all the ins and outs, but it's as if they were trying to obviously create a tour to kill off basically probably the PGA Tour and the European Tour. So
certainly rival it, yeah.
Yeah, or rival it. So, I mean, I suppose like anything, you're obviously going to expect the PGA Tour and the European Tour to fight back and not want it to happen. I mean, if the figures that people are throwing about are true, it's just kind of mind-blowing amounts of money. But these guys have mind-blowing amounts of money anyway.
Yeah, that's the intriguing part of it. If you've got...
How many more zeros do you need?
Exactly. And it does prove that if you've got enough money, you can buy anything.
But it also proves if the players have enough money, they aren't driven by money anymore.
Well,
they'll only do something if they want.
Which is, as we speak right now, things are not looking good for the Saudi. I mean, the top players are...
No,
the male players are
pulled
up to
out
now.
of it, haven't they? Yeah. And if any had ever committed.
Yeah.
It's... I think golf is so traditional. I think anything that would come along and try and shake up the kind of ecosystem of golf it was going to be kind of scary to the tours.
Yeah. I think
the principle, having a world tour and having more golf outside the US, I thought Adam Scott, I listened to an interview he did, spoke very well about it. That principle of trying to get more events. I mean, because these World Championship ones, if you're being brutally honest, are 3 of them are in America.
Yeah, well, they're dying off as well.
But then you could argue the PGA Tour, have done a great job. Tiger,
Well, they had Tiger. Having Tiger was huge for golf in general.
So you can kind of see it from both sides. I mean, I would love to see more golf around the world and the top players coming and playing around the world more.
Yeah, I mean, where do you stand on the moral human rights aspect of all this?
I mean, should sport get involved in that? I don't know. I think all the companies, all the top companies in the world are probably doing business with Saudi, but they can do it quietly. But sport, with it being in the spotlight, can't, in a way, do it quietly. Personally, I probably think sport should keep out of politics, and then it's a personal decision of the player.
This goes a wee bit beyond politics, though.
It does go a little bit beyond politics. I mean, obviously they've got, you can't deny they've not got a good record with human rights, and obviously different things. But there are other countries. Would you go and play in China? I mean, there's lots of other.
I mean, you're right in the sense. I mean, I was in Saudi Arabia 2 weeks ago at that tournament, and the place I was staying, it was a university campus. It's kind of surreal place. I mean, if you've ever seen the Truman Show, that's what it was like. But the wee supermarket had everything. You could get your bar of Cadbury's Dairy Milk and whatever else you want, just like you could in this country or America. And when you went to the bathroom, it had Kohler written on it. Now, Kohler is big in golfing. He owns Whistling Straits, I think, and so your point as well.
I mean, and I've been there a couple of times, and I know going there to play in a golf tournament, you're not seeing the true Saudi, but being treated very nice, very well, and felt completely safe. And you could, for me, it's like Dubai maybe 20 years ago. I don't know.
Plus, if you,
it's a very difficult one. I mean, obviously their human rights record isn't good, and they've probably done a whole lot other things as well. But
I mean, even if you have an Uber. Anytime you have an Uber, you're giving money to the Saudis because they basically own Uber. So they're everywhere. It's hard to escape it.
It's hard to escape it.
But we've all got a line somewhere, But the women's golf are in a very different position vis-a-vis Saudi. I mean, you've touched on it. The tour, they're heavily into it now. It's intriguing, actually, that the Saudis didn't want to get into women's golf first because that was there for the taking, if you like. It's maybe a bad phrase, but it would have been a lot easier for them to take over fund women's golf and make a world tour, for example.
Yeah, potentially it would have been a lot easier. I suppose it all comes down to media. The men's golf gets more media and more exposure. So if they were wanting to put a lot of money in, then maybe want to try there first. I mean, it is a very difficult one. But
yeah, I mean, it leads me to believe that if they were really,
I mean, you could say, are they? Might sound hypocritical, but could you go there and say, you've played there and there were women out watching, Saudi women out watching. So is that showing that if there's a women's golf tournament there that, women can, I don't know. I mean, if you don't go to these countries, will they ever change?
Well, that's right. The thing is, the other side of that argument is that
there's always two
if you
sides.
give them a wee bit of encouragement, they don't actually do any more.
Yeah, they don't change.
Yeah.
But yeah.
But I'm thinking that if they were really interested in just doing good things for golf, they would have piled some money into the women's game. But that didn't really they were really far more interested in the big names on the men's side, and the sport washing accusation gained some credence because of that. It wasn't necessarily what was best for golf; it was what was best for them. Which is fair enough. It's their money. But,
it's their money, I suppose. Yeah, I suppose you could argue they could say they get more exposure. Yeah. For their bucks, but they're spending more money.
Yeah, but do you foresee the women's game getting more involved with them if the money's there? You kind of need the money more than want it.
The women probably would, need, especially the European tour, the ladies' European tour. That's probably for a question for people further up the chain than me.
Well, I don't know. I'm going to make you commissioner for the day. What would you do?
I think obviously, if you'd have to be very careful. Make sure you were dealing with who you thought you were dealing with, and potentially.
You're already starting down that
road.
They've
already got. We've got 4 or 5 events sponsored by Aramco. So and Golf Saudi. So.
Anyway, I've kind of dragged you off the Solheim subject. I want to get
into far too political.
Well, it's good. It's good for you to be asked a hard question. The Solheim. How do you look back on that now? And how hard was the decision I touched on it earlier to do it again, because it really couldn't get any better after Gleneagles.
Yeah, but
you were playing with fire a little bit.
It actually wasn't too difficult. I think I enjoyed being the captain so much, more probably than I thought I perhaps would. And then to do it away from home was always going to be so different. Yeah. I wouldn't have done another home game, but I think to do one away from home, because it is so different, being away from home and not having the crowds, and you're not doing as much of the, promoting of the event. You're not quite as involved in all that. So it was really just, when you're doing an away match, it's really just you and the team, really. So, and then, as you say, to do something no one's done, it's always quite nice.
Absolutely. And there must have been a little bit of a downside, was that the crowds were so, it was basically all Americans. There was hardly
it was 99. I think we were lucky if we probably had 50 people there.
Yeah.
In a way, though, playing away from home is so difficult, and you're not going to have many of the crowd. But this time, we kind of knew, and the team, I think they were more prepared in a way, because you knew you were going to have no one, basically. In a strange sort of way, that actually made it easier, because we went there knowing we weren't going to have any support, rather than, we'll have a little, but it's going to be drowned out.
Aye. Yeah.
So you went there and you just knew all you were going to hear was the USA chants, and them, which fair enough, cheering on their own team. So in a way that it was just what you expected, and I think the players just kind of put their heads down and got on with it.
Mm-hmm. I must admit, I was watching on telly and I did laugh out loud. I literally laughed out loud at the end when you were all there with the cup and there was nobody there. The American crowd, they were gone. They have no interest in watching you
perhaps don't
celebrate.
like losing.
Yeah.
Obviously at Gleneagles, if we hadn't won, there wouldn't have been as many people there at the end, but I would have hoped there would have been some stayed.
Yeah, absolutely.
But that actually, what we all commented on that as well. I think when Emily holed that putt on 18, to beat Danielle, and then you saw our whole team, kind of everyone, the caddies, the physios, that was basically our support. That was the European team. And in fact, a lady the next day, I was delayed in Toledo for a day coming home, and she actually apologised. She said, I came to I'm so very sorry everyone left.
Yeah, well, they did the same at Medina. I remember watching them streaming out at Medina at the Ryder Cup when they had the miracle, if you like. But there was hardly anybody there.
It was literally when Matilda holed that putt for us to retain it. And then it was probably 40 minutes till Emily finished, and literally 60,000 people literally left in that amount in that time.
Yeah. Was there any doubt in your mind about not doing it again? That was enough.
No, I was always just when I took it on.
The right thing, I think.
When I took it on for the second time, I knew I wasn't going to do it again, win or lose. I think it's one of those things that's such an honour to do, that other people deserve that chance. I think you can do it for too long. You don't want to do it for too long and then people start resenting
Home and
you.
away is fine,
Home and away was great, had a great run. But then it doesn't take a rocket scientist. You could see people lining up to do it and have their chance, which they fully deserve. And Suzanne obviously was kind of there. It was pretty obvious, she was going to do it. And then probably the next few will be fairly obvious.
I would imagine her style will be slightly different from yours. Is that fair?
It could well be. We'll find out.
She's always had more to say, put it that way. Or more obviously to say, put it that way.
Yeah. I think in a way we're all very similar in the same sort of way. We're all just kind of super competitive people. I think that we're all far more similar than perhaps people think.
Yeah, internally, yes. Yeah, more than there's a great variety of external, ways of showing it, but yeah.
Yeah, I think we all have the same competitiveness. We all have the same kind of demons, as you would say, in your head as golfers. So people just show it in different ways.
Yeah. Has she been at you for any advice? She was around. She saw how you did it.
Yeah, I had a dinner with her just before, she was announced as captain. So it's still a long way off.
Aye, yeah.
It's really next year, when she starts formulating her team, seeing how it's developing.
A chance to win again as well.
Yeah. I mean, as anyone knows, what is it, a year and a half in golf's a long time. I mean, obviously, the Americans have started pretty strongly this year, but how people are playing now really is fairly irrelevant.
Yeah. How did you do when it came to the picks? Were you had to be kind of brutal? I mean, you have to be inevitably. There's somebody going to be disappointed wherever you draw the line.
Yeah.
What was that like?
I mean, I think no matter how many picks you have, it's always probably the last one that's always going to be tricky.
Yeah.
Your first probably, however many obvious. You have, are pretty obvious. And then it's always going to come down to probably 1, 2, 3 people for that last spot, which is always difficult. Yeah. I remember having to phone Mel and telling her she wasn't in the team, which was difficult.
That was the Gleneagles team.
That was at Gleneagles, yeah. That was probably the most difficult conversation there. But, great on Mel, and I think that just shows how much she loves the Solheim. That, I asked her, do you want to be vice-captain? And she said yes.
Yeah.
So I think that shows great volumes for Mel, actually. And then this last one, probably, to be fair, was slightly easier. I mean, obviously there were some players who were disappointed. The Sana Nutin who just missed out. But things, for me personally, I felt just fell into place at the British. Yeah. And I probably got the 12.
And there was more changes.
I probably got the 12 I wanted actually.
To be fair, I wrote it down and I got it right, which says something, because it's not easy to do.
No.
It was pretty obvious. Not any credit to me. It was just that that was kind of the best team.
There was no Suzanne pick.
No, exactly. Yeah. Before we leave the Solheim, that's the obvious question is, what the hell were you thinking when you did that?
Well, to me, that wasn't a bizarre pick at all.
Yeah.
And obviously, Laura and Catherine thought the same. We all I remember in Phoenix, in March. Of the year of 19, Catherine was caddying for me there actually, and Laura and myself were playing, and we sent a little video to Suzanne saying, "Come on, get your clubs out. We want you in that team," kind of thing. So it was always there in our minds that we would want her in the team.
More than in hers, maybe, is it?
Probably more than in hers. Yeah. And then I remember I played with her at the Dow, which she had committed that was going to be one she played in.
That's the team thing.
The team one. Yeah. And she was. You don't go from. Mm-hmm. And I had come back, obviously, to play after having children, so I knew it, it could easily be done. I think, especially with your first child, you always have doubts that, will you come back? Will you be able to play? Will you have that competitive fire still?
Yeah. She had plenty of that, though.
But she had plenty of that. And we played with Anna and Caroline Headwall, and I remember asking them, after the first round, I said to Anna, what do you think? She says, we need to have her in the team. So, for us, it was really, it wasn't a strange pick at all.
Yeah. But you put her under a lot of pressure. Did she ever comment on that to you?
No. I think Suzanne was.
She had to justify it. That was the hard part for her.
Well, I told her she didn't.
Well, really. but she would be thinking that.
She would. Yeah. I think Suzanne had played in enough and knew that if she wasn't playing well enough, she would have said, "Look, I'm not going to play."
Yeah.
And we knew that, when I knew that kind of when I asked her that, because I knew I would have said, if I had known I wasn't playing well enough.
Yeah, you would have.
I would have said. And match play is different. You're not having to string 4 rounds together.
Right.
If you have a bad hole, it doesn't matter. That's kind of what I said. I said, look, you're not going to have to go out there. You know, not going to play you foursomes.
Yeah.
Play you in the 4-ball. You know,
Yeah,
which
she could hit one off the planet.
you could hit.
It wouldn't matter.
You could hit the odd bad shot, and it's not going to matter.
Yeah. The match play aspect definitely helped. Yeah, and it certainly worked out.
And then the 4-ball, I don't think it's quite as much pressure. I think it would have been probably silly to try and play her in foursomes, where a lot more pressure on every shot.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I've said this many times, but the hardest thing, I think, almost hardest thing in golf is playing foursomes with somebody who's playing better than you are. You know,
That's
it
very,
puts you a
you've
lot
got
of
to
stress.
feel comfortable. Well, I think that's on the person who's playing well to make the other person feel comfortable.
That's true, but you're still going to feel it. You know,
You're still going to feel it, but I love foursomes.
so did I. You know, it was a good, it was a great exercise.
Probably because it's more a mental game than 4-ball in a way.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, the 4-ball. I don't think 4-ball is a good game at all because one guy can win it. The classic example being Nicholas Colsaerts at Medina. When he played with Lee Westwood, he went round and just birdied every hole just about.
But then you could argue that he did that because Lee was knocking out pars and it gave him the freedom.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I always think that's a bit...
Yeah.
I never kind of like that when someone says, oh, they won it. Because you never quite know what the other person's
Well, it was just that it was ridiculous the number of putts he holds, you know. So.
But it's giving them that freedom, isn't it?
Yeah, true enough, yeah. So Lee Westwood's whole manner might have helped him. You know.
Yeah.
So. Anyway, we've done a lot of looking back. Just to finish up, let's look forward a wee bit. Where are you just now? And are you going to play much more golf, or what's your plans?
You know, it's all kind of a little bit up in the air. I'm obviously going to play. I'll play the Senior Open. I might play, a couple of European events. Ideally, the team events, just a little bit less pressure on you. I enjoyed them last year. Had a great time in New York with Trish and Alison Lee. So they were great fun. Really enjoyed that. And then I'll play Muirfield. It's here. It's a home game for me, as you say, the Women's Open. So, I'm kind of... Would I have played in the British this year if it wasn't at Muirfield? I don't know. Would have maybe just depended where my game was. But, I got to the stage in my last probably 2-3 years on tour where, I wasn't enjoying golf at all. I think you maybe only have so long at the top of the game, and then the nerves kind of hit in, and you're not hitting the shots you want to hit, and it's not that I couldn't hit them, I just couldn't do it under the pressure, which was always probably a great thing of mine, that I could produce the shot under the pressure, and that was just... Have
you found the putting a bit more of an issue as you've gotten older? Most people do.
No, I think it's just. Don't get me wrong, I can still go out and play well. It's just doing it under the pressure, which is what separates. It's what separates. Because at the end of the day, you could go to a tour site and walk down the range, and everyone swings it good, everyone hits it well. It's who can do it under the pressure. Yeah. And I think that's the thing as you get older that perhaps you lose. It's not that you lose your golf game as such. It's you lose the ability to do it under the pressure.
Yeah, that's interesting. So we're not. I shouldn't expect any retirement announcements. So you'll never really do that, or
never really retire.
You just fade away, will you?
Yeah, just fade away gracefully, or not.
Yeah, well, that's a good way to finish. Beanie, thank you very much for your time. It's been fun.
Thanks very much, John.
I reckon if you look up class in the dictionary, you might just find a picture of Catriona Matthew. Understated, thoughtful, eloquent. She might not be a headline grabber, but as I think she showed there in that interview, a golfer well worth listening to. That wraps up episode 60 of the pod, but make sure not to miss our next episode when we sit down with one of the great characters of Australian professional golf, Vaughan Summers.
He's the ugliest player to ever win. He never, ever looked like a good player. I played a really lot of golf with him, and just the most marvellous professional, the most marvellous person to play with, the most marvellous preparer, and the least affected by anything his game ever did. By a mile, the least affected. He hit some of the worst shots playing well I've ever seen, and he'd look at him like, walk off like it was the best shot you've ever seen.
Which major champion could he be talking about? Tune in to find out next time on The Thing About Golf.